So the strategic context a year on, I think there's about 10 points there on that slide. As I said from the outset this morning, only about 10% of levy collections so far have been spent, about 100 million over 1.3 billion. That tells you how good my arithmetic is, because 100 million over 1.3 billion isn't 10%, but roughly about 10%. A huge underspend in the system. There's expected to be, there was original proposals that there was about 2.5 billion to be collected each year. That's been increased this year to 2.8 billion. And I think if you look at that and the momentum going forward, significant further activity going on to collect more levy. And I think, as Mark said, it's pretty clear that the levy is here to stay. And there is a lot of concern in government around about actually what they're going to do with a situation where probably 2 years on they may be sitting on a £2 to £2.5 billion underspend, apprenticeship volumes down, the need to demonstrate potentially 3 million apprenticeship starts in the life of the Parliament, and how are they going to actually deal with that? So there's a lot of things going on at the moment, particularly in those areas where if you're in a combined authority, such as Manchester or Birmingham, particularly watch this space about where the government are looking to pump more money through those organisations to stimulate, through lots of different activities, new areas of apprenticeship starts, both for levy payers but also for non-levy payers as well. We talked about the slow momentum in terms of across all sectors. I don't think that's a bad thing at all, but there is absolutely no doubt that that momentum is starting to build across a whole range of different sectors. And I think that as Phil illustrated earlier today, that those organisations that very much do stand back, take a strategic approach to the way they want to use the levy, they really are now starting to gain significant advantage and significant benefit. And as Phil said, how long is it since your finance director came with a £1 million cheque and said, invest that in training and development? It is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for organisations to take that forward. End test assessment. Mark talked very eloquently about end test assessment, but we have a lot of concerns about end test assessment. It's a car crash waiting to happen. The volumes of activity that are going to start coming through end tests and the momentum that is starting to build is very, very significant. So if you take management, for example, we have one employer where we've calculated that in 12 months' time, one member of their L&D team will be full-time for 365 days a year, or 220 days a year, sitting in professional discussions. That cannot be acceptable. It is not fit for purpose, and therefore we're working very, very closely with our end-test organisation, CMI, to make sure we can all work to a situation where we get something that is really fit for purpose. But for large volumes of activity going through, the end-test assessment requirements, and those requirements aren't things that Mark invents himself. These things are imposed upon the end-test awarding organisations, and they're simply following what has been put in place, are actually very, very onerous. And I think as employers, together, we all have an opportunity. We're a levy employer. We all have an opportunity to work together, to lobby, to actually make sure that the end-test process is rigorous, it's robust, but also it's fit for purpose in the practical situations that we're working in. So take this environment, Wembley Stadium. We have individuals here at Wembley Stadium with Delaware, which is one of our clients, doing management programs. They are required to sit and end test. They're delivering concourse catering at the cup final and those things. So how we actually deliver that and demonstrate that is going to be a real challenge. And I think we can all work together with the end test organisations and as employers to make sure we get something that is fit for purpose. And that challenge is over the next 12 months or so before we really establish what is going forward. The employer's role in stimulating demand and delivery, picked up about that. The college sector, continued commitment to make levy success. And I think what the penultimate point there is, I think we will see in a year's time the 3 million threshold reducing, There will be more employers coming into scope within the levy. And I think, as probably everybody knows, for those non-levy employers, those employers that are under 3 million of payroll spend, from the 1st of April 2019, all of those employers will be using the DAS account. So there will no longer be any contracts awarded to training providers, and you could see it being a bit of a open season for individuals and for providers in that particular area. And we also have significant fragmentation in the market. So what do we see in the year ahead? Significant momentum. We're already beginning to see that with organisations. Significant amounts of activity in the public sector, where the public sector are really starting to build momentum in that particular area. But again, no real common themes coming through in terms of approach, other than, as on the bottom point there, are beginning to see a move and a drive towards the appointment and procurement, particularly through procurement routes, of lead providers or MSPs. We are currently bidding now in the public sector that I can think of for 4 organisations where the tender procurement process is requiring a lead provider to be appointed. And that's very, very new. We've been appointed now to about 20 organisations, mainly in the corporate sector, where we are lead providers, but in the public sector, that is now starting to build as a common theme. So NHSBT, which is one of our new clients, we've been appointed there. They're very much leading the way in this area, and we've been appointed their lead provider across the UK. But for example, at the moment, the House of Commons, they've got a tender out. It's a lead provider role. They want to appoint one organisation to lead. The West Mercia Police and Warwickshire Police, again, they want to appoint one organisation to lead. The London Borough of Redbridge, they want one organisation to lead. And I see that very much as a common theme that is going to come through over the next few years. So why are organisations looking to take that approach? And most importantly, what are the benefits for them? And I think some of these things Phil touched upon himself in the talk that he made earlier. I think the important one is the one right at the bottom. The provider delivers a lot of the grunt into the organisation, whether it's engine room or whatever. It delivers a lot of grunt that ultimately you, as an employer, would have to resource and pay for yourself. And that's a real key benefit. But I think really importantly, what it also does, it develops a real strategic approach for you as an organisation to how you are going to invest in your levy, not necessarily spend it all, but how you are going to invest and get best use out of the levy and a return on your investment as an employer. It also, again, as Phil said, it creates a true identity and a true brand for your apprenticeship provision. I have a team, or we have a team at 3As who are permanently now putting in procurement bids, not only in the public sector, we're putting through about 8 to 10 procurement bids every single week. Often in the public sector for 1 apprentice, 2 apprentices, or for 100 apprentices, often through different lots. And the argument is that we have to follow public procurement rules. There is absolutely nothing further from the truth. But actually what that ad hoc letting of tenders does, often for the same organisation, is it doesn't give a joined up, cohesive approach or strategy as to what that organisation wants to achieve. And I could be a line manager who has an accountancy apprentice with one provider. I could have a management apprentice with another provider. I have different sets of paperwork. I have different e-portfolios. I have different people to talk to. And actually, as a line manager, I am absolutely, totally confused with what I'm actually getting. What an MSP does, or a lead provider approach does is it actually gets rid of all of that. It creates common systems, it creates common paperwork, it creates a common quality assurance mechanism, not delivered necessarily by a single provider, because no single provider in this market has the ability to deliver everything that you as an organisation is likely to want, because your needs are likely to be very, very diverse. But it also enables you to build a branded programme, and we believe a very cost-effective approach, because that MSP costs you as an organisation nothing incrementally, because the cost of it comes out of your levy itself. So we see certainly that MSP or lead provider relationships over the next 12 months to 2 years are really going to take on and really drive forward, particularly in the public sector. Hence, we've appointed Dan to lead our activities in that particular area, because the procurement cost of procurement is absolutely prohibitive, particularly for a number of organisations. And we are bidding for 1 apprenticeship here, 2 apprenticeships there, 3 apprenticeships there, and it costs proportionately. It's very, very significant, not only for us, but for the authorities, whether it's a health trust or a public sector organisation. It's actually not value for money as a taxpayer to be going through that approach. An MSP deals with that and creates significant value to individual organisations. So there are very significant benefits to clients. There are very, very significant benefits in the long term. And what it also does, entering into an MSP for 3 years or 5 years, enables the provider, the lead provider, to invest ahead of time. I believe that's exactly what we did with Greencore. It was 12 months before we saw any revenue in that relationship, but we were investing in that relationship as lead provider, and that's what we will continue to do as we go forward as an organisation. But I very much would suggest, recommend and urge you to look at that as organisations, because it will create significant benefits, and we'll talk a little bit about over lunch as well for those who want to listen. So other reflections very quickly with 3 or 4 minutes to go. EPA, I've said enough, let's move on about EPA, but I think the key message is let's all work together to make the EPA process work. Work for you as employers, work for the providers, but fundamentally work for the learner as well, because I think what we're going to have if we're not careful is a lot of learners finish their program and go, this EPA thing's all a bit in the too difficult box, and they never actually end with a certificate of completion or whatever. So we have to work together in that particular area. I hear a lot of employers say the standards aren't what we need, or the standards aren't out yet, or when a standard is released, we can't find a provider. Well, that will be the case, because unfortunately, in the whole development of standards, standards have been developed often in the absence of the providers. It's groups of employers coming together, absolutely right, but actually the providers who ultimately are going to deliver those standards are absent from that process. And what I would say is, if a standard is released and as an employee you say, actually we quite fancy that, but you actually want 1 of them, or 2 of them, or 3 of them, the likelihood is, as a provider, because we are businesses in our own right, what we have to assess is there a market demand for us to build the resources, build the product, recruit the staff, and to deliver to the volumes that are necessary to deliver a return, because like we are in it for business as well. So I think it's really important in that context that it's a partnership in that sense. So if you've got a standard that you want, and we're working with Europol Car Parts, for example, where we're having a big dialogue and a big debate and getting to an agreement where we can build the investment in for a new standard that they want, but the commitment is both sides. They're committing to a volume, we're committing to an investment, and I think that's really important as we go forward. And finally on this slide, Ofsted, we've already seen a couple of instances of pretty poor Ofsteds of new providers. Key 6 is one, and we've picked up some of the fallout from that with one of their clients. There are more to come. And I think what Mark's illustrated in his talk is actually delivering commercial training very effectively, very professionally, and having very happy clients isn't necessarily the same as delivering an apprenticeship through the Levy. And what we're finding already is there's a lot of new providers trying to deliver what they've always delivered without the important acknowledgement that apprenticeships requires capacity and infrastructure to deliver effectively. So finally from me, 4 tips really. Spending. It really is your last opportunity. If you're not spending much and you don't want to hand anything back in May next year, it really is your last opportunity. And if you want to talk to us, we have a modelling tool. We can help you with that. But it really is an important point, particularly for those of you in the public sector. Time is now, we're a year on, to review strategically what you've achieved, what's gone well, what's not gone so well, what's gone well, what have we done well, what haven't we done so well, and work together. I think about moving to an MSP or lead partner relationship, whether it's us or whether it's somebody else. I think you will get very significant value from that as you go forward. And finally, and really importantly, it is a partnership. It's about give and take. We are all together on a journey, on a brand new journey, as Phil talked about earlier. And there will be ups and downs. There will be some crashes. And it's important that we all work together to make sure that those crashes are minimised and the learners get a fantastic experience as we go forward.